up, guys? In this video, I'm going to show you my game against the youngest Grandmaster in history, Abhimanyu Mishra. But before I get into that, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more great chess videos. So this one, I'm actually going to show you guys the opening, just so you guys can have an idea of the thought process at the kind of that higher level of chess. And now I play a bunch of openings, so I'm a little bit more free to not show, but this one, you guys got the good stuff. Alright, so d4, I'm going to go e6. So this was a game 30. So the games are pretty fast. So you kind of want to have your opponent get low on time and eat up a lot of time trying to make decisions. So I went e6 here because I wanted to give him the option of going e4 and making a French, which I'm very comfortable with. So he goes c4, sticking with his original opening. And then here we have a Catalan. So d4, c4, g3. Kind of the idea here is white wants to be safe. He doesn't want to have to worry about getting attacked. It's pretty hard to attack this structure just in general if you don't castle queenside. So this is kind of just the general, very strong chess player, I'll beat you eventually kind of opening. So bishop g2. And here I could go into normal Stonewall at d5, but it's game 30, so I want to keep him guessing. So I go bishop b4 check. Now there's a couple options here. Knight c3. This kind of turns into just a normal Nimzo. Bishop d2 is a move, and also knight d2. So these are all the options here. Obviously, queen d2 is not a move. All right, so let's start with bishop d2. So that's what he goes for, and I take. So now there's queen takes and there's knight takes. So he goes knight takes d2. So here I go d6. So when I see knight takes d2, what I want to do is save my move for castling and try to open up in the center and get more space ASAP. Because here my king isn't in such danger, so I can kind of save this move and try to castle faster. So here after d6, he goes e4. So now he's playing aggressive. So the second you see e4 like this, you know your opponent's really trying to come at you. And I would say that's kind of his style. He definitely plays with a bunch of fire. Like he likes to just put pressure on his opponents. So e4, I did think it was kind of fast, so I went knight c6 to attack this d4 pawn. Now, some ideas here is, for example, if he goes d5, I can go knight e5. And now he kind of has some problems because I can take on e4, I have threat on c4, but most importantly, knight d3 check, and then he can't castle. I mean, I kind of forked this pawn, but that's not even part of it. I really just want to get his king weak. Remember, I'm playing the Dutch, so I'm trying to play some aggressive chess here. So he doesn't go d5, he goes knight e2, just a normal move. And then here I go e5. So basically taking advantage of this tempo and trying to play more aggressive in the center. So he has a couple options here. For example, if he goes d5, and this is something to know as a Dutch player, generally we're really happy after d5. Because after d5, we can go knight e7. And now the center is closed. Now he's going to push these pawns like b4 and c5 and try to break through here. But when the center is closed, that's a good read to attack the king side because you have more time. And then I can try to go castle, g5, f4, and really push on this king side. So t5 was not worried about. So he takes. I take with the knight, which actually pawn takes is going to be a little bit better. Now the reason I didn't want to play this variation is I get the isolated pawn. This is not an IQP, it's an IKP because it's an isolated king's pawn. Now computer actually likes this variation. I'll go ahead and turn this guy on. Computer likes this variation just because black has a lot of space. And by like, it means it's equal. Now here, like the ambitious route is queen b3, and then things really get pretty crazy. Like I can sack it with castle, he takes, knight d4, this gets pretty wild, or I can just kind of play rook b8 and just stay like this. All these positions are playable, definitely some interesting chess here, but here I definitely would have to feel like I have to be careful because my king is stuck. Now his king is also going to get stuck after bishop d3, so we just have a very complicated middle game, which in game 30 in general you want to avoid. You really want your opponent to be a punching bag and you to not have anything to worry about. Obviously, that's going to be hard to achieve against a strong player, but that is the goal there. So d takes e5, I just go with knight takes, kind of keeping this idea of knight d3 check, so he has to castle. And then I just have like some active knights. That's my idea here. So castle. Now here, I could castle, but the problem here is he can take, and if take, this b7 pawn, I mean, in theory, hangs, but here it's not really a problem because I have rook b8 and I take on b2. But instead of take on b7, he can kind of just play it slow, I guess, like knight f3. And not really sure what's going on here. But so I decided to take here first and knight takes. Now here I would not want to play knight takes e4 because I'm going to help him develop his piece. So this is going to be a big theme that I want to kind of push throughout this video. If you capture, you help your opponent's piece come forward. So in general, always think of trades as a bad thing, unless you have a purpose. So that's why here I just castle. He takes on f5. Wait, sorry. Take on b7. No, this is not the line. Sorry. Let me go back. So knight takes e5, castle, castle. No, sorry. I'm being tripping. I take on e4, knight takes e4, and then now I castle. Now here, if he takes on f6, is the same kind of idea. He develops my piece for me, and then I have a lot of ideas here. This b2 pawn is a threat at some point with his knight discovery. Knight f3 check. I'm going to attack the light squares. I have the f file. So that is why he didn't take here, because he would help me develop my piece and bring my piece forward. So castle, knight f4, and here I decided to take, because now I want to get this like, not necessarily this endgame, but something like, if I can trade off these two bishops, I have a solid position, and there's a lot of holes in around his king, so maybe I can get something going over there. So that's why I took here on e4. And then here he played an interesting move, queen d5 check. Now, I think he could just take. Actually, let me show this variation. So take on e4, c6, and then this position is pretty, I guess, complex. Like this d6 pawn is weak, but this king is, I guess, a little bit loose too. So that was my reasoning here. Maybe he should have gone for that looking back. But knight f4, knight takes, queen d5 check, king h8, and then queen takes e4. Even here, I thought bishop takes was a little bit better, but I think he made the right move. So now it's really really the critical moment first critical moment of the game, because I make this big decision. So I go bishop f5, just a natural developing move, sacrificing this v7 pawn. And my idea here is after rook b8, take and take here. Okay, I'm down a pawn, but I have a lot of pieces around his king. Like right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, and the queen comes in pretty fast. Now the problem is his king is pretty solid, so it's not going to be super easy to open this up. But at least in a game 30, I'm firing on all cylinders. Now, a very big risk with this is if I don't win, this A pawn is just going to roll all the way down. And it's basically, he's got his bodyguard, his sniper watching to make sure everything goes okay over here. Making sure this pawn can kind of push all the way down. So it's not that I'm all in here, but I definitely have to win by checkmate or some kind of material, win material through this attack. Otherwise, if I get to an endgame, this pawn is just going to knock me out. So he goes c5, and this is when it's like, it's go time. I go g5. So g5, knight d5, and now bishop d3. Now here, my idea here was, okay, even if I win this exchange, it's still going to be a very tough game, but at least I have some material for the attack that I have, I guess, put underway. Now, he doesn't sacrifice it. He takes on d6 take, and now we have a couple variations. For example, if he goes rook fd1, I can actually take on f2, and I'm going to take with this rook, because here I'm not so worried about these checks. He goes check here, I go king g7, and then I'm safe from checks for a bit, and then these rooks are super powerful on this this row, and there's going to be a lot of checkmating ideas for sure. Now a cool variation is rook fe1, take, queen takes, rook takes, king takes, and now I go queen check. So now the king doesn't actually have any squares, so he has to block with the knight. So knight e3, I can go knight g4 check, king f3, take, rook takes, and then really cool checkmate, queen f5 would be mate right here. The king is in the middle, it's boxed in by the bishop, and this would have been a very pretty finish, but I'm sure 100% that he saw all this. So here he actually goes for queen d4, and then I take on f1. Now here, I pretty much assumed he had to take. Rook takes f1, and I would take on a2, and then we have a very complex position. So I'm up in exchange, but my king is very weak, and he has a very solid position. So I would have to be very careful here, but technically if I traded queens, I should have very good winning chances, especially with this passed pawn. So I was looking forward to that, but instead he takes on b2. Now originally I thought this wasn't possible, because if I take on g2 and he goes king takes, I take here with check, and then I'm easily going to get out of this pin and just go king g8. But once he took on b2, I saw this idea. He can go knight e3. Now here, this is how to properly win the game. There's some really cool tactics here. So here, I played king g8, kind of the simple move, but a very nice move is bishop a8. So first, let me show you guys this variation. So knight c4, I can go queen c6, threatening mate on g2 and h1. and he's gonna take here with check, but then I have rook f6, and the geometry here is beautiful. Like, the best way to say this queen is a girl worth fighting for. She's holding this down, she's holding the rook down, she's threatening checkmate, and she's, on top of everything, she's attacking the knight. This is like strong, independent woman. Let me say it one more time.
What do we want?
A girl worth fighting for.
Wish that I had.
A girl worth fighting for. So that's what happens if knight c4. Now knight g4, I can actually just go rook e8, and if rook e1, I have a very, very nice move, queen to d2. So the idea of queen d2 is now if he takes, I have knight f3 check. And you would think here, like, okay, after I take the queen, he can take my rook with check, but the king can't go anywhere where it's not going to get checked on the next move. King g2 or king h1, I take here with check. King f1, I also take here with check. And more than that, I also win the rook on top. So this is just game over. Now queen d2, he doesn't really have any other moves. I'm attacking the rook, attacking the queen. Let's say he goes queen a1. I can even just go queen takes e1, queen takes, and then knight f3 check, and that is GG. I'm pretty sure it's just checkmate too. So that would have been the proper way to end this game. But instead I go king g8. We're starting to get kind of low on time here. I would say about like 5 minutes each per person. So take on f1, take, and then knight e3, king g8. Now idea here is I just sidestep out of the pin, and now this king is still weak. Like, you can, like, this complex is very intriguing to me. Like, the whole time, once I knew this bishop was out of here, I would have some kind of counterplay around this king. So that was my idea here. So he goes queen b3 check, which is a very nice move. If he just takes here, I thought queen c6 check was going to be very nice, because this knight f3 is going to come, but I think I don't have anything more than a draw here. It looks like his king is weak, but I only have really two pieces attacking. That's not enough to really get some big material. So queen b3 check, king g7. Now here, after queen b3 check, I have to decide between king h8 and king g7. So these kind of moves are always kind of hard for me, because I've seen what can happen with just a difference of one move. Like, if the king is on h8, you got to deal with these checks, queen b8. And if the king's on g7, you got to deal with knight f5 checks and this pin. So that's why I was thinking here for a little bit. Now I went with king g7 because the ultimate deciding factor was if this position went to an endgame, my king is more developed and it can come over here and kind of reach the middle of the board faster. So that was my kind of default. I figured either way, king g7 or king h8, there's a disadvantage to each with queen b8, knight f5, but the advantage to king g7 is if I do reach an endgame, I have a slightly better king. So king g2, queen d2, putting pressure on f2. He goes rook f1, knight d3, putting pressure on f2, and here he goes queen e6. So queen e6, basically he's saying, okay, if you go for this, I'm going to go for your king. So now it's really in the, basically it's the boss battle. It's the final battle right here. Whatever happens here, we'll see after that. So I take on f2, he takes, and now here he has two options, king h1 or king h3. Now king h1, I'm pretty sure I have nothing more than a draw, like check, here, check, and then he has to repeat. If I try to play for the win here, he has a lot of threats. Knight f5 check is going to almost assuredly be some kind of checkmate. And the endgame, he has the outside pass pawn, so trading queens would also be disadvantageous to me. Now instead of king h1 though, he goes king h3, and if you want to pause your videos now you can try to look for the tactic. I'll count it down, 3, 2, 1.
Light it up.
So here I went knight f4 check, very cool way to finish the game. Because if pawn takes knight, I go queen f3, and this is checkmate to the king. And obviously if he doesn't take the knight, I take the queen, and he just has no compensation for it. Funny enough, he's actually getting checkmated too. So a very nice ending to a pretty cool game. Remember, it's game 30, so you don't really put too much weight on it, but I mean, this kid could be world champion one day. Definitely 2,700, very strong chess player. So we'll definitely take our victories against our opponents and just move on to the next one. So I mean, honestly, a very entertaining game against a very strong player. So I'm not even gonna ask you guys if you were entertained. So I'll see you guys later and leave it at that. Peace.